Hello and welcome to Dropping Pebbles in the Pond. And tech willing, we're live on a variety of different platforms. So wherever you're watching, and I have to say whenever you're watching as well, but whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, whether you're watching live or watching the recording, welcome to my show. As usual, I invite you to grab a brew or your favourite tipple. Tonight, I have a rather delicious electrolyte drink because I'm taking care of myself a little bit better. Grab a notebook as well, because not only do I have a few questions for you to reflect on, and I'm going to ask you to share your thoughts, but I also have a very, very special guest joining me in a little while. So you'll probably want to make some notes. Once you've gathered those things, settle in, make yourself comfortable for the next 45 minutes or so. Now, just for your information, it's easier for us to see your comments because I've just said I'm going to ask questions and want to see your answers. And it's easier for us to see that in real time so that we can interact with you more conversationally if you're watching on YouTube. So if you are on one of those other platforms, you've got a minute while I'm just kind of settling in here to head over to YouTube because you'll have a much better viewer experience over there. Now, I'm always interested to know where you're joining from. So do let us know which part of the world you're currently in, or as my dear friend Mary Alice Arthur says, where your feet are currently hitting the ground. And let's see if we can break our record of 4 continents this tonight. So as you start to put your comments in, eventually I'll start to see those, because as ever, I'm being supported or held together, as I so often think about it, behind the scenes by my brilliant team. And they're going to share questions, comments, where you're viewing from, etc., as and when they become relevant, because I don't always remember to look. And that's one of the things that my team do so beautifully well for me. Now, to the title of this particular episode, which is Being Your Own Ally and Advocate. Now, this is a topic dear to my heart, as I'm all about enabling people to take aligned action rather than doing things for them. You see, I consider myself, as you know, a change agent, which means I'm a facilitator of change, not a rescuer. Those who have a habit of rescuing tend to create learned helplessness in those that they rescue. And that helps no one, either in the short term or the long term, actually. Now, a rescuer may feel somehow noble about what they're doing, but probably flat out or exhausted by the amount of rescuing they're doing. And the person being helped fails to find their independence, which is why I'm about enabling and not about rescuing. So whilst it's magical to have people around us who are prepared to be our ally and be our advocates, for me, we have to be prepared to do that for ourselves. So for me, it's about us being resourceful. I can see that we've got some comments coming in about where people are joining from. So High Tech Mother, thank you for joining us. And we are indeed lovely ladies. You wait until you see my guest. Thank you. And hello from a very confused Melbourne. Why very confused? Now I want to know more. Once a week story. Brad, yep, confused Melbourne. Why? I need to know why you two are confused in Melbourne, or is it the weather? And Szebastian is saying, well, hello, rock star. And I've got to change that, Szebastian, because it's hello, rock stars. Blue Roads Education, brilliant that you've joined us from Blacksburg, Virginia. And we have Patty in the house, the change agent, queen of hope. Yes, 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 yes. And it's lovely to have Patty here. Now, I was talking about the fact that we have to be able to be our own ally and advocate. And for me, there are a number of factors that enable that, really, which are things that are built into the very fabric of my Frustrated to Flourishing program. And two essential components are the ability to stand in our own power and take aligned and intentional action. So it's really about being able to take action that brings about systemic change, which is what advocating for ourselves is really about. And that usually starts with being able to support and encourage ourselves in that process, which is where we need to be our own ally. Now, as ever, when I knew that I wanted to explore this topic on dropping pebbles in the pond, my thoughts, of course, turned to, and who would be my ideal guest? And one person sprang immediately to mind, and that's Ali Hollands Hook. Now, I first met Ali, I was working it out earlier today, about 14 years ago. And I admit that I was, can I admit this, that I was intimidated, but not in a bad way, but kind of in awe of Ali. Because as you'll soon discover, she was the brightest person in the room, mentally, creatively, visually, in every blooming way, I've got to say. And I knew I wanted to be more like Ali one day. Ali has been my trainer in clinical hypnotherapy. I've been her trainer in Mike Dooley's Infinite Possibilities work, and she never fails to inspire me. And I am such a lucky woman, because I really do have the coolest friends and colleagues. Now, Ali's business is called The Happy Human, and Ali herself epitomizes the happy human. So I think it's about time that we invited her to the stage properly to introduce herself. So, Ali, without further ado, please tell us more about you, who you are and what you do.
Will do. First of all, thank you. I love that. A little bit intimidating. Yes, not the first or last time I'll probably hear that. And I love the fact that it's like through being an absolute chaos monkey. So anyway, yeah, so my company's called The Happy Human, and it was a very deliberate rebrand. I've not always been the happy human. I met Joe in 2011 when I first trained in hypnotherapy, and I had been in a completely different named brand up until I think it's about 3 years ago, and then it just did not fit anymore, because there was the word was change in there. Now, whilst change happens, I had been going towards this kind of feeling of, there's a realignment. And so that's how The Happy Human came about. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more, what that really means to be a happy human. So that's my hypnotherapy business. So I'm a solution-focused hypnotherapist, which means that I do not go digging and delving in the past. There is healing. It's amazing for trauma work, but we focus on the now and in the future. It sounds like the new big thing, but actually solution-focused work is about 50 years old. So it's really not. It's the same kind of birthplace as things like CBT and stuff like that. It's around the same time. It's just only now really coming to the fore. So it's it's the most beautiful, powerful, it's like soft power incarnate. And it's really, we were talking about rescuing versus enabling. And empowering, and it's all about that. People know what they've done when they do the work, and because I love it so much, I also teach other people how to be solution focused hypnotherapists. So I train with the people who, yes, Brad, yes we do, thank you, well done, got the reference. So Brad was saying that we look like mermaids. Brad is right. So I train for the school that trained me. And I'm also a clinical supervisor, so I look after professional hypnotherapists. And because I'm a big old nerd, I also run a community for hypnotherapists, because when you go into this, most people are changing from one career to another, or they've never worked for themselves. So it's challenging to run a hypnotherapy business. So I also run a podcast called Create a Thriving Hypnotherapy Business, and the community that goes with it. So that kind of keeps me mostly out of trouble. I mean, mostly.
Yeah, mostly. And I'm glad you added mostly, because if you follow Ali on any of her channels, you'll see she does mad things like cold water swimming with a hat on and her big dry robe at ridiculous times of year. So yeah, you still get into trouble, and it wouldn't be you, Ali, if you didn't get into trouble, really, would you?
No.
But I do just want to, I suppose, differentiate, because I absolutely love the notion of the happy human. I am an optimist myself. I am generally happy. And we were talking beforehand, kind of online and in different places, about the kind of positive emotional attractors, the P's. And I see that you've got behind you 2 P's in a pod, which is...
Actually, there's actually 3. You just can't see the third.
Okay. But can we just differentiate for a moment between the notion of being happy and toxic positivity? Can we just go there a minute?
Oh yeah. If you want to get me ranting, it's like the whole do not get me on it. Just think positive. Happiness is a choice. I'm like, it's a choice when it's a choice. Up until then, it's work. So I know it's a sneaky pea. So yes, the toxic positivity is basically it's emotional. I would say it's emotional discounting. There's a lot of dissonance in there. Like, I need to be grateful, I need to be happy. I meet lots of people like that who go, I've got a really good life, but I still feel bad, and then there's guilt attached to it. So that's not a happy human. I can be in the worst mood in the world, struggling with things. There can be real challenges, and my clients can approach challenges, but a happy human is every bit of the experience. So it's really happy human is a more easily to understood, fully realized human, because that's what it really is. It's like there's every bit of you, and all the bits of you, whilst they might not be super welcome, Gladys, I'm looking at you, they have value. They do, because Gladys she's a good motivator. Now, she used to be a bad motivator, because she used to motivate you like being, beaten with a stick. And now it's like, Gladys, you can shut up, because I've actually got this. So, your inner critic. Well, I love the fact that she's called Gladys. I would talk about the primitive brain, and I love that you get Gladys. My primitive brain is called Nigel. So I don't have an inner critic. It's similar to the chimp paradox. We talk about the primitive and the intellectual brain, and I have a primitive brain, and it's called Nigel, and he's a health and safety officer, and he probably talks like that. Right, tangents. You're gonna have to keep me on track, Jo. I'm very good at tangents, or not. I'm going to attempt to bring myself back to the concept of happy human. I actually wrote myself a manifesto about this. Literally sat down and went, what is a happy human? What does it mean to be a happy human? And it's that bit where you're not trying to push away any part of yourself. All of you is welcome, and all of you is okay. And I think it's really important, because if we don't have that, the light and shadow, we're living a half a life, and that's not happiness.
I've seen and heard people talk in the past, and it's certainly experience of mine, that without the darkness and the depth, we don't necessarily understand and appreciate the light. So we need both of those. And I think one of the words I saw you use in a post that I absolutely resonate with is it's about acceptance of ourselves. It's not about being perfect or being right. It's just about acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at all the bits that we're trying desperately hard to reject, there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
You know, they're just, maybe they're unassimilated, maybe they're unheard worries, they're unmet needs.
Yeah.
So it's just the more we kind of go, okay, I actually do need this part of me because that's me. But I don't necessarily need it to be acting out in this way.
Yeah. But
So
what you're not doing is discounting it.
yeah, the problem is not the part of you. You know, when you talk about personality, I was going, well, personality is a completely fluid concept. So it's just you. So, and it's about what's that, how's it coming out in the world? So I am pig-headed. And so, and that can be really unhelpful, but equally that can be really helpful. So it means I can keep going when you would think, nah, just give up. And I'm like, no, I'm annoyed now. We're going. And sometimes with clients, I'm like, oh, we've got pig-headed Ali out now. Now it's got no chance. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to give in, but it's going to give in because we've got to this stage now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's those sorts of things, that stubbornness and pig-headedness can be really helpful.
Yeah. In the same way that my inner critic can be really helpful, because every now and again, Gladys will alert me to something that I do need to be a kind of cautious about or aware of.
Yeah.
So it's not that everything she says is wrong, and I've just learned to be discerning. And I've got to say, one of the messages that came up, Ali, I don't know if you saw it, was we've got a Nigel in the house.
Really sorry, Nigel.
In fact, we've got some more comments to come in, I think. So yeah, Nigel.
Not Nigel like you, Nigel Booth. Nigel like my my primitive brain Nigel, who is you know, he is a health and safety officer. He wears high vis and he has a clipboard.
Yeah.
And he gets in the way of things. So that's my Nigel.
Yeah.
Mine was called Nigel, and then I married someone whose father is called Nigel. I have not shared with him that my primitive brain is called Nigel. I've just glossed over that.
How fabulous.
Yeah. So yeah.
How fabulous.
It's not about you. It's not about you. Don't worry, Nigel.
But we're very glad you're here with us. Are there any more comments we need to see? Yeah. Off track is better than yes.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can keep me off track for hours.
Brilliant. Yeah, Ali's, and you can see now why I was in awe of Ali all that time ago, because as I say, she was the brightest energy in the room, kind of intellectually, creatively, visually, everything. So I am very lucky to have Ali in my world. And Szebastian's sharing about his 14 personalities, and they all have a job to do. Yeah.
Love that.
What I would love to kind of start to move towards is, bearing in mind we're talking about allyship and advocacy, have you always been your own ally, Ali? God, that's a hard sentence to say, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this, and the answer is because I was like looking through the like talking points, and the answer, it was just all I've written was no. No, I was not always. I was the opposite. You could say my own worst enemy if there was.
Yeah.
I did not, because I was talking, because I was thinking about, I listened to that lovely podcast you sent me about advocacy and allyship, and allying, ally being the real actions around it. It's not the you can talk about it and see it, and it's a fully formed thing that you can go, I'm going to advocate for you or advocate this, and there's words attached to it. Allyship is much more action based. And no, I was awful, absolutely rubbish. Would put other people before me, didn't really rate myself. Do loads of stupid things, like tons, just really stupid stuff. The choices are being made in work, in education, in relationships, all of the classics. Just did all of that stuff. And then kind of went on and had to have, the moment where you go, come on, mate, this is not okay. You can't keep doing this.
And do you remember when that was, Ali, and what the kind of the catalyst for that was?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a horrible catalyst, but actually it's, it's the truth, and it's kind of started the whole of the next,
right.
I'd say the other half of my life. I say I woke up at about 32. But my mum died at 20 when I was 26. And then we have kind of like a catalogue of things happening. Some of it lovely life events. I got married, I had my daughter. But also it's basically I did not cope well through all of that. I was still very much not an ally. I was just bumbling through life, and often ruining everything as well. And then I kind of woke up and I was just like, okay, this is not all there is. There must be something, a better way to be.
Right.
And that was really the start of it, was kind of that realization that there had to be a better way to live, because this can't be it. Because it was like, you're 30, I was 30, that bit where you sit there and go, God, if I'm going to have to do this for another 40, 50 years, I don't think, I'm not sure how keen I am on this, that this is not the point of this life. And obviously it took ages to figure that out. I mean, now I would say, yes, I'm absolutely, I think I hit 50 and whatever was left, that just burnt up on the day. It's like, poof, gone. It's like that. Now it's just like, you are definitely in the second half. You don't have time to muck around. I don't have time for any nonsense now. None.
Yeah.
But so between then and then, it's been steadily growing through various different ways.
And what's interesting in your story, I think, is almost there was the kernel of the solution-focused approach when you had that moment of there must be something more to this. So it wasn't like bemoaning your past, but saying, actually, there's a brighter, better future for me out there somewhere. I just need to work it out and figure out how to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was, and I think that's why I loved the solution-focused approach when I came across it. Was because it was like, oh, this is, I loved hypnotherapy, because I trained in hypnotherapy in 2011 and didn't retrain. I think I qualified again in 2015.
Right.
So, it wasn't that it was like, oh, it's just brand new. I had all this other stuff going on, and I'd done, all sorts of fabulous fun things. But when I hit the solution focused approach, it was just like, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
This is great, because, and I think it's that, sometimes, and I loved it because it was that feeling of sometimes we get so close to the problem and we dig into it expecting to find this magical solution just popping out of what is actually a pile of poo. And actually what we need to be doing is kind of stepping back from it, because sometimes we're so close. And I quite often tell clients, if we step back, what we realize is that we were so close, we couldn't actually see there was all this other stuff around.
Yeah.
And that's what we look for. So it's like we get highly fixated on one path. I can't do this, it doesn't work, but we're missing all the other ways we could do things. So
yeah.
And it does have to start with somebody going, there must be I have no idea what it is, but there must be a way. Yeah,
absolutely. And that kind of chimes very nicely as well with the work we did, you, me and Carol, I think it was, around Mike Dooley's Infinite Possibilities work, in terms of when we step back, we get a chance to see some of those possibilities that previously we were too close to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of comments come up. Can you pop those up again, and we'll just see what we can respond to there. So this is Patty, Blue Roads Education, use solution focused counselling as a school counsellor. Yeah. And I think the point Ali kind of made around a solution focused approach, whether it's counselling, hypnotherapy, whatever it is it doesn't require us to, drains up on everything that's been. It's kind of, this is where we are. Where are we going to go forward from here? Which is something I love as well.
Yeah. It is. It is, and that's what I love about it. As Patty said, it's practical.
Yeah.
It's so practical, and it just, and what I also love about it is it can be really simple. It can often sound like a conversation, so it's not that, it feels quite informal, but actually you're asking these questions in just the right way to kind of unlock a few things. So it's really nice like that. So it just allows people to think a little bit differently, which is fabulous.
Yeah, nice. So if we kind of change track slightly and think about then the advocacy piece, which is in a way, the actions that are aligned to kind of changing systems, whether it be, in my case, kind of shifting the extroversion bias, or systems that you're changing. At what point in life did you advocate for yourself? Was that the same time as when you became your own ally, or were they two different times?
It's really, it's like I was trying to think about it, and I'm not great with timelines, and I am naturally solution focused, because it's like, bam, 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 it's all in the past. And my friend, as one friend said, Ali, you've got a really revisionist view of your history. Also great, because I'm really good at not telling anyone anything. So I'm a brilliant therapist, because it just goes in and it just goes to the bottom of the well. So I think it's just slowly built up as I got more confident. I do remember, a conversation with a friend where he was talking about work and being in leadership, and he goes, I don't really care if they like me. And it was, when it was almost as if somebody had said the worst swear word in the world, and I was like, I didn't know what I did. I was like, how does that work? I have no clue how that works. Tell me this foreign world. Because it was, I couldn't imagine how somebody could be so chirpy and not care. He goes, no, I need people to do things. So I have to manage them and lead them through this, but they don't always have to like me within that. That was a revelation to me. And another friend who was incredibly straight talking, to the point where I'd like wince sometimes. But then I'd be sitting there and I'd watch, and I'd be like, they haven't sworn at him. They haven't cried. They actually look a bit grateful. So I observed it, because it was foreign to me and I didn't understand it. And one of the things I do is if I don't understand it, I watch. So it's almost like I need to learn this foreign language. So we talk about named personalities. So my friend who is makes you wince, he's so straightforward, he's called Chaz. And he is, I want you to picture him, because he's such a sweetheart. So he is from South London. So if you're not from the UK, imagine the slightly rougher end of a nice city. And he's very straightforward. He's a bit of a geezer. He definitely drinks pints. He's like, all right, H. That was how he referred to me. So he's like a bit of a Cockney geezer. And I would channel my inner Chaz if I had something hard to say, because I would waft around the subject and then people would be offended. And I'd be like, but I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah.
And it's like, somebody doesn't need you to be nice. They need you to be straight. And so then I was like, okay, well, if I do that for other people, I need to do that for me. I need to be straight about what I need and want.
Oh, brilliant.
So it kind of built up from, how do other people need me to show up? And then, of course, at some point, you have to add yourself into that equation. So just like the rescuer gets burnt out, and it's because they're so busy rescuing everyone, they've forgotten to rescue themselves. So the same thing. It was like, oh, I could do that for me. So yeah. So and practiced it in little ways, and just like, oh, okay, let's observe.
Yes.
Okay. No, nobody died and nobody swore at me, in a way that wasn't funny anyway. So it's slowly built up over time. I think age with a lot of people, particularly sweeping statement alert, as a woman.
Yes.
I do feel like, I do feel like we need to, that it is a sweeping statement, because that's not, it's not the truth for everyone. But I've observed it often enough to be able to say it's a thing, is, at 40, as we hit the decades, I think everyone does it a little bit, but I think women at 40, there's something that happens and we get a little bit feral. And then at 50, it's like, wow, I thought I didn't care at 40. Whoa. Literally, it was like the last I had to give. It's like, poof.
Gone.
Yeah.
And all I'm going to say, Ali, is wait till you get to your 60s, mate.
Oh my
because
God. I'm feeling sorry for people in advance.
Every decade for me, because I certainly wasn't my own ally. And I think I saw a comment come up from Brad maybe about what's the difference between ally and advocate. And my very simple definition, in a way, is an ally is somebody who's kind of there to listen. Yeah, come on. Yeah, I understand. Kind of in your corner, if you like. Here's the question. How is being your advocate different from being your ally? Yeah, genuinely keen to know. So if I was somebody's ally, we were in a workplace situation, then I would maybe be a listening ear for them. I'd be a counsellor. I might be a bit of a coach to them, but I'd be there for them in some ways. Whereas for me, being an advocate is about taking action to change things up. So it's not just doing the kind of, yeah, I hear you, I understand, there, you can do it, whatever. It's actually getting in there and speaking up for ourselves. And so for me, what you just mentioned, Ali, about kind of, things almost layer by layer, becoming more feisty, more sassy, in my words, is what sort of has happened to me over the years. And my 40s were definitely better than my 30s, which were pretty dismal for me. 50s better than my 40s. 60s have been even better. And it started with me, first of all, being in my own corner and not kind of feeling sorry for myself, not being the victim, but actually kind of just doing actually, you're all right. And it's that acceptance thing. I accepted who I was and I learned how to play to my strengths. And then once I'd got that piece, I was then able to advocate for myself, which is where I talk about myself being quietly gutsy and being a cage rattler. It's like I won't put up with things. I won't tolerate things anymore. I will say something. Whereas before I'd have gone, better not, might upset the apple cart. It's like, apple cart, yep, away we go then. Yeah. So I think there is something. So I hope that's answered your question, Brad, about the difference between the two. And one of the revelations for me was, because it's part of my process in terms of identifying who my inner critic was, Gladys. I also discovered I have an inner advocate, and my inner advocate is Goldie. And Goldie is a great foil for Gladys, because what Goldie will do is kind of call BS on what Gladys is doing and actually really get me into the place where I can be quietly gutsy. So yeah, I just love that. I love that. And I also love the fact that we are here, me definitely a decade and a bit older than you, but we are here as women of a certain age to say, actually, life can get better. We can be more who we're meant to be, or more of our potential, however we want to look at it. And we don't need to hold ourselves back. And I think you're a beautiful example of that, Ali.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So when it comes to thinking about, okay, yeah, we've got some comments coming in. Let's have those fun comments coming in, then see what we've got. Because patiently watching is such a beautiful way to process and learn. Yes, isn't it? And people need to learn that art. Thank you. So just like Australia then, mate, I wonder what that one was about.
Oh.
To give first aid, you need to see you're safe and enter the venue. Yes. I almost want you to say a bit more about that, Brad. I don't know if you can, but there's something very deep in that comment. So I'd almost like you to share a little bit more. Sweeping statement. Yeah.
It's my thing. People say who worried about getting older. I say, well, start early. Start early. I'm almost. So I was 36 when I started saying I'm almost 40. And everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, because I want to get there and be prepared. When I get there, I don't want it to be, oh God, I got to 40. And I did the same with 50, because 50 was just like, that's half a century. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I literally spent 6 months every time I said it. I was like, half a century.
Yeah.
And so, but by the time I got there, I was like, this is brilliant. Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. My girls have got visions of who I'm going to be. I've got 2 daughters who have already know that I'm going to be absolutely unhinged. I'm old, and they're quite looking forward to it. One of them thinks I'm going to have look, that's just Ali and her crows, the crow lady. That's one of them. And the other one just thinks I'm going to live it, because she lives in Florida, and one lives in the UK, one lives in Florida at the moment, and the other one, I just said, I'm just going to live in an RV on your driveway.
Yeah.
I think it would be fun.
Yeah, a Dame Maggie Smith thing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Either that or Helen Mirren, who said that she wished she'd learned much earlier in life to tell people to F off. And I think there's, yeah.
I agree with her. I took that to heart. Another one where I observed and followed through with that.
Yeah.
It was like, if it's good enough for Helen Mirren, good enough for me.
Spot on. And one of the things that Ali has always been a role model for is the best shenanigans ever. She is the shenaniganator. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Ali?
I love the word shenanigans. It makes me happy to hear that.
Yeah.
It looks different than it used to.
Right.
So, as I think it does, I say up to the age of 37, the phrase "I'll sleep when I'm dead" works. After that, no, that is not true. You need to get some rest. So there's no more going out till 5 o'clock in the morning, coming home, getting changed and going to work. We don't do that anymore. Like day raves. Such a civilized thing.
Yeah.
So you can still do all the things you do, or just come back from, I was not snowboarding because I'll get hurt. I'm very easy to injure, but there was a massive lake there. So I did get in the lake, and I did have to break through the ice to do it. And it was very fun.
That was CELMINE, wasn't it?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. It's very beautiful. Very beautiful. They all had fun throwing themselves down mountains. I had fun throwing myself into a lake.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was beautiful.
And talking about throwing things into lakes, I think it's about time for today's pebble. So when we're talking about dropping pebbles in the pond or the lake, once we broke, it very definitely is a proper pebble that we're dropping. So and I'm going to sound a little bit preachy for this one, and I make no apologies for that at all. So today's pebble is that it's unrealistic to sit back and expect someone else to advocate for you. And of course, it's made easier for you to advocate for yourself if you're your own ally. Learned helplessness gets us nowhere fast. So what do you need to do to get out of your own way and accept who you are with love and compassion? So that's my pebble, Ali, and I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, first of all, I agree. So, because it's the thing, it's like, and I think that's one of the things, like, nobody's coming to rescue you. That is not permanent. Now, they might do it for a bit and they can be there to support you for part of it, but ultimately,
Yeah.
it has to come from you. Because otherwise you will never be fully your own advocate or ally, because you're always expecting and waiting for somebody else to come fix it for you.
Yeah.
And then we won't ever figure out all the brilliance of ourselves. We will not be able to plumb the depths of our skills and attributes. We will have no idea who we are, because we're always waiting for somebody else to fix it and make it better. So the more that we start to go, okay, what can I do to make it even just a little bit better?
Yeah.
You know, so because that's the thing, it's just like nothing happens all at once. There's no take massive action, do it once and everything's perfect. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's fantasy world. So it is about, taking those steps and reflecting, taking a step and being okay falling over a little bit,
Yeah.
being a real person, because we won't always get it right, but we do have to do it and keep going.
Indeed, we do. Two things come to mind as you're talking. One is that I'm a huge fan of the kind of David Brailsford approach to marginal gain technology, where do lots of things a tiny bit better than one thing a kind of, a whole heap better.
Yeah.
And there's that, I wish I could remember the exact terms, but there's something about maturity is when you recognize that one step forward and two steps back is actually a dance and not failure, something like that.
Yeah,
and actually
I've seen it. It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah. And for me, that's very much about that, if we go right back to the definition of flourishing, it's about navigating the peaks and valleys of life. It's not just all peaks. There are going to be some challenges thrown in there too.
Yeah.
So I have a question then. And this is the question that I want people to reflect on, think about for themselves, and maybe put their answers in the chat. And it relates to something Ali and I mentioned earlier about the kind of positive emotional attractor, and how when we start thinking about, what could be different, we're thinking about a vision of the future, not necessarily goals, because that throws us into a negative kind of space. So my question is, how might your life be different if you were able to smile at yourself in the mirror and accept what you see rather than notice the faults or the problems first? So how would your life be different? And if you can pop your answers in the chat to that, that would be, or on a postcard, pop them in a postcard, who minds? And that is the difference between kind of working towards a vision rather than a goal. And I'm a big fan of creating visions that we're working towards. So, Ali, I'm pretty sure that the audience are going to want to know how to find out more about you, how to understand how you work with clients, what the whole happy human stuff is all about. So we've put up on the screen a QR code so that people can find out all about Ali. But tell us in a few words, Ali, the easy ways to find out about you as well.
So the quickest and simplest is happyhuman.online. So that is my website. It connects to everything else, or the happyhuman.online. I did both because, actually, if I'm honest, because me, not because any other reason. So I've tried to keep it. So Instagram, Facebook, there is YouTube. Please don't come and find me on LinkedIn. It's not my favorite place. I know. I keep trying and it's just boring. And I've got a very low boredom threshold, and I'm very sorry that I'm not grown up enough to do LinkedIn. But that actually was one of my advocate for myself, is just admitting, it's like, no, I don't want to, and I don't have to. But website is the quickest place to kind of have a look at everything. And then the other place is, if you're interested in the training, is cpht.co.uk. So that's the training school.
Yeah. And having been trained by Ali, she is one of the most engaging trainers I've ever worked with. So if you're even a little bit curious about training as a solution focused hypnotherapist, go find Ali. I missed that Nigel one, sorry. His Patty, oh yeah, I start every day with my morning mantra: nothing and no one will spoil my day to day, including me.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that addition. That is beautiful.
Yeah. High Tech Mother's saying, it took time, but it made my life fulfilling. Yeah, that kind of acceptance piece. I get that is Brad O'Deep. Have to get back to you on this one. Okay, perfect. And Patty, I've been looking at myself with kinder eyes for the last several years. Nice. The habit of doing so has a grand ripple effect in all areas of my life. And Patty, you may not know, but you, Ali, and I are connected through the One of Many community, because it was Ali who nudged me towards Joanna Martin. And just so that you know, Ali, Patty is a One of Many trained coach, trainer, not sure which, but she's in that community as well. So isn't it small world?
Tiny world.
Indeed. So listen, that brings us to the close of today's very special show. And Ali and I have spent time kind of musing and nattering really about around the territory, I suppose, of allyship and self-advocacy. And I think what you've heard from both of us is that we weren't born this way. You know, at some point we made decisions to kind of to be our own allies, to advocate for ourselves. So as with much that I explore on this show, it's actually an inside job in very many ways, actually, to make those changes and to be who we really need to and want to be. And Ali and I both help people do that, but in different, our own powerful ways. But we're all work in progress. And of course, long may our flourishing journeys continue. Hang around, Ali, because there may be questions for us to answer. But for this evening, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you, to welcoming you on the next show. Thank you for that.